Joining us in the sandbox today, we discuss process mining with our very own Anant Gupta, just ahead. Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Prolifics Innovation Sandbox. I'm your host, Greg Hodgkinson. If you're new to the show, today is our third episode of a series we're running every week, and you can join us here every Thursday at the same time. Each week, we're hosting different technology experts who are leaders in their fields, and they'll share their passion and what they see being the future of hot technologies like big data, process mining, blockchain, DevOps, and much more. As always, we also want to hear your voice, so please submit your questions at any time during the show in the live chat, which will either be to the right or below the video feed. And don't forget to stick around towards the end of the show for Q&A. We have a very special guest joining us in the sandbox today. He is our own Anant Gupta, good friend, cricket enthusiast, and business leader of our digital automation and cloud solutions practice. Anant, welcome to the Innovation Sandbox.
Thank you, Greg. Always good to geek out with you.
Fantastic.
Good to see that light bulb right over you. It's very apropos in your head.
That is our innovation light bulb. And I almost got my innovation center and my innovation sandbox mixed up there. And as you know, we're doing a lot of the work that we're talking about in our innovation center. And that light bulb is very important to those efforts. So anyway, let's get back on track. So today's topic is process mining. For those that are not familiar, why would you want to mine a process, and what does that even mean?
I think at the broadest level, I would qualify process mining as an approach to take out the skepticism from your process discovery initiatives. Right? I mean, we have all been in that big conference room where a bunch of consultants and bunch of business people are sitting after 6 months of analysis, trying to put sticky notes on the wall. And there are business executives sitting there with a lot of skepticism, because they're asking for facts and all they get is opinions after opinions after opinions. So process mining is a way to make it more scientific. It is really, at the end of the day, looking at the event logs and doing a time series analysis, frankly, on the event log. So it's not rocket science, but what comes out of it is a factual representation of what your process actually is today, how people are actually working in your organization, and the analysis that you can do on top of that is really, really meaningful and useful for the organization. So it's a way to mine the process using the event logs that are generated from the IT systems. So that's sort of a technical definition, but that's how I'd qualify it.
And so what I like about that is, I mean, definitely as somebody that's been through process analysis exercises myself many times, they can be very effort prone. You need to get quite a few different folks involved in it. They're people that are very precious to the business. Obviously they've the key knowledge of those business processes, and it does take time. I mean, you need to sit down as an analyst and understand their points of view, reconcile their points of view, and it can lock some very precious individuals for that organization in a room for lengthy periods of time. And I guess the what you're saying is the skepticism comes out of the fact that doesn't always give you a good outcome and a good understanding of what those processes are. So if I understand what you've just said, process mining is really automating that process and automating the gathering and the definition and the understanding of that business process.
And through that automation, what you're getting is not just speed, but accuracy, right? I mean, if you do an as-is analysis of your current process landscape, and it takes a year to do that, and you get 40% accuracy out of that, and it pretty much ends up being a meaningless exercise, right? And that's where a lot of people were not happy with the way they're trying to understand their current state, and pretty much skipped that whole as-is analysis sometimes. It took a lot of shortcuts. So this really puts the meat behind that and applies science to it.
Yeah, not to mention the fact that after a year or even 6 months of analyzing a process, that process, no business is static, and that process is changing, even throughout that exercise. So even just to get to the first square one of understanding the as is, that could be a flawed analysis. Just to talk about that, when you're doing business process analysis, the terms as is process and to be process are obviously common. And process mining is very much about getting that as is process. However, it's obviously the to be process that's going to give the value to the business. It's the new state that you're moving to. So why is that as is process still so important to us?
To be honest, I've spoken from both sides of my mouth on that one. I've been a purist, and I've said that, look, as is the most important thing. You need to know where you stand today before you can really say what will improve your business process. But like I said, if it takes a year and you're not getting accurate information, you're getting opinions from a bunch of stakeholders, and it's not all accurate. It's not exactly how it's happening in real life today. Then I started kind of second guessing myself, and I was like, is it really that important? We're taking so long, it's so costly, and it's inaccurate. But I think with the process mining, with this whole scientific approach of understanding your current state, it just takes a completely different paradigm. It's very, very important for you to know where you are, because that's how you're going to see what the process improvement opportunities are. Over time, people take shortcuts. Over time, what is actually happening in your organization is not exactly what you have put on the whiteboard, right? And that's where you need to understand, because what you might end up doing, and what the worst case scenario would be, for you to do a bunch of analysis for years with a lot of cost and end up doing exactly what is actually happening in your organization today, because people have already figured it out, right? So that's where it becomes so much more scientific, and it becomes so much more of a business case that you can produce for process improvement, not just from an automation standpoint, but a lot more things around it.
Yeah.
Automation is a big one.
And we'll talk about that. So I guess so process mining is fundamentally changing the game there. So it's and I have also, I must say, experienced the disillusion in spending a lot of time on modeling as is processes, and I'm sure many folks can empathize. But process mining, saying it changes the game because you can get that as is definition quicker, and it takes vastly less efforts. And it's going to be more accurate. So I just want to, going back to what you were saying in the beginning, and again, for those folks that aren't really familiar with process mining, you spoke about event logs and the fact that somehow the event logs for our systems are what's used as the input to this process mining initiative. Do you want to just spell that out a little bit more, so for those folks that it really, they get a good understanding as to how that works?
Sure. I think one of the most common questions that come out of whenever somebody's trying to understand process mining is, people have this feeling that somehow the process is being modeled, the process is being defined. And I just want to make it clear that in a process mining exercise, you're not trying to define or model the process. What you're doing is you're trying to collect digital footprints, digital nuggets from your IT systems, from the events that are being generated from your IT systems, and trying to correlate them together and doing a time series analysis on those event logs to visualize what the process actually is. So without defining or modeling the process, people are just coming to your organization. They come in during daytime. They work on certain systems, certain software. They interact with the system a certain way, and that produces digital footprints. So imagine if I can collect the digital footprint from across the organization, just put it in a big bowl and put some magic sauce on top of that, and shake it well. I can actually visualize what process you're actually following, based on the time series analysis of each and every person that is interacting in that process. So that's what is happening. But the beauty is, it is all backed by real data. So you actually know how many different variations of the process you're taking, what is the frequency of the different events that are going through certain variations. And based on that, you can do a lot of effective analysis, whether it's a cycle time analysis or cost benefit analysis, or what will happen if you do certain things, certain automation or certain re-engineering of the process, or even just certain reallocation of resources. So it is really a way to optimize your process and to ensure that you're moving towards a better operations and operational excellence.
Now, I must admit, there still does seem like there's a bit of magic involved because, as you say, it basically ingests that data in your systems, the digital footprints, and then the end result is still, although you're not modeling, the end result is still a graphical view of the flow of your process with all those different variations expressed as well. So, I mean, you do get that view. And that was always great about a process diagram, process model is it's something visual, it's something folks can get their heads around, talk to, understand, discuss. You still get that with this exercise. It's just that you avoid all the pain of having to create that through consultation, and you use software to basically get those diagrams for you. So a huge amount of value there.
Absolutely. But I want to add that it's not the same view, right? One, it is the most accurate view because it is the real, it is exactly what is happening. But more importantly, it's backed by real data. So when you're trying to really understand what happened, why did I take 6 months to do it? In a regular case where you're just doing it by stakeholder interviews, people will end up denying it. No, that really never happened. It never takes 6 months, right? But here you can just drill down and open up the Pandora's box and say, no, look at this one. Look at this particular case. It took you 6 months. So it really kind of guides you towards where the problem areas are, and you're really trying to address those rather than just trying to address things that you think are wrong.
Yeah.
Right? In a regular scenario, there's a lot of confirmation bias. People already make up their minds on how the process is working. We are doing well in certain KPIs. That's what I think, and I will have a very strong opinion about it, right? But it's not based on facts. It's just my opinion because I've been doing certain things for the last 20 years. And I'll start producing data or start producing just giving some anecdotal evidence to support my bias versus real. That's a huge difference.
And I guess that's something it's always a danger if you jump straight into defining a to be process, is you miss out on all that, the reality of where you are today, and getting process mining gives you the warts and all view on what the world looks like today in your business, what that process looks like, with not only the ambitions and the areas you want to do better in, with a blue sky thinking view of the world. You really understand, as you say, where those issues are, and where those problem areas are that you need to address in that to be solution. It also makes it a lot more scientifically based in terms of prioritizing where you spend your effort in terms of making an improvement.
Absolutely. And it makes it measurable, right? So it lets you define a business case with the proper cost benefit because you know where you are, where you want to head, and you can. Otherwise, it's just a guesstimate of what the benefit is going to be. So this helps you actually create and pass a business case through all the approvals because you're basing it on facts, and it's a huge deal. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I do want to say. So, why do you think now is the right time for business to consider process mining? Is there a special or specific urgency brought on by current pandemic situation?
To a certain extent, yes, absolutely. I think it's there is a lot more focus on cost optimization. There's a lot more focus on operational excellence. I think somehow process mining or any of these techniques or operational excellence, people think of it as sort of a back office work. I don't agree with that viewpoint, but somehow people feel that look, we really need to focus on our cost.
Well, I think we lost your audio there, Nance. Hopefully we can get it back again.
Is it better now?
Yep, that's back again.
I don't know where you guys lost me, but I heard your question. So
I heard most of that, just the last few seconds.
Okay. So I was saying that it's somehow folks consider operational excellence to be a back office work, and maybe that's why they're focused on process mining or process improvement at this point of time. Although I don't agree with that viewpoint, but that kind of gives more emphasis to process mining because of cost implications there. But I think it's beyond that. I think it actually impacts the customer journey. It actually impacts the customer touch points. So there is a lot more to process mining beyond the cost part of it. But because of the focus on cost, I think people are kind of slanting towards process mining and process optimization at this point.
So actually it
And
brings
based
up yeah. So it would be very interesting to know those business process. So if you did process mining kind of pre-pandemic and then post-pandemic for the same business, it would be interesting to see I'd assume you'd actually see variations in your process, and as your process is playing out across your business. So if you've been doing the old-fashioned process modeling way of approaching your as is processes over that period, you could kind of throw those processes out the window because our new reality is very different. So process mining would again continually, and I guess that's something else worth exploring, is it's not a once-off exercise. It's not that you do it up front and then you know what your as is process and variations are. You can continually assessing and understanding and visualizing your processes because the world changes, as we've definitely seen over the last few months, and process mining will allow you to continually see how that affects your business processes as they're playing out.
I think we also have to factor in, the fact that there is going to be a lot of churn in organization as far as workforce is concerned. So, the people that have been doing your operation stuff for many years, you might have had to let some of them go. You might be hiring new people in, and they might not be following all the policies and, might not be complying with all the different things that you have in the organization. They might be not well trained, as well as trained as people who have been there for a long time, and you probably had to furlough them or whatever was going on in your organization. So with these new people, it's all the more important to see exactly what they're doing and if they're not complying with certain things. And a good heads up that you can get with process mining can go a long way.
Yeah.
Even from that.
So I know you and the team, I've known you for a long time, and the work that the team's been doing for decades now, and you've had a strong focus on business process automation within the team. How does this new approach change business automation or business process automation?
So I think it just gives automation a much more broader view, right? So when we talk about automation, especially if you talk about the new age stuff around RPA and robotic process automation, it's a very limited view, because all it is saying is that I want to automate and save the time of a particular individual by doing the task that he's doing today. So maybe somebody's spending half an hour on a certain task, you automate it, and you're saving half an hour a day. You multiply it by the number of days, and you get a business case for maybe 50 grand, 60 grand, right? So the automation business case is typically very limited if you're just focused on automating the manual effort. But once you start putting that in the context of a process, then it gives you a much broader view, because now you're saying, if I automate a step here, it might, reduce my cycle time like this. I might do revenue generation, revenue acceleration. I might reduce the wait time in some other step, downstream. And that gives you a much broader business case. It might be a $1 million business case rather than a $50,000 business case, doing the exact same thing that you're doing, which is automating a step. Right. So I think it just gives a different perspective to automation, because now you're in a much broader context and you
So you
have all
much
the
better.
data.
So you much better understand the value that you aim to get and actually do get out of automating parts of that process.
Absolutely. And like I said, it's not just around automation. The implications could just be around resource allocation, and which is another huge problem in organizations, where they really don't know where their most effective resources are being deployed. Are they putting them in the right place? Is that the most value they can get out of that? Whether it's human resources or other physical resources, right? So the resource allocation, resource optimization also is a huge problem that can really be solved through process mining.
Yes, and what I love talking about when we do have conversations about what you and the team are doing for our customers, it really comes through kind of the passion that you have that drives the work that's being done. What would you say? What inspires you to want to do? What's the root of that passion? What inspires you to do more for our customers with techniques like this?
I would say it's almost all of our clients, they really don't want to pay for software, right? They don't want to pay for services either. What they want to pay is for outcomes. And I think that's what drives us. If we are able to guarantee an outcome, and this is something that you will hear from me and the whole team, and I'm sure you've heard it from us multiple times. We're really all about guaranteeing outcomes. right? And process mining, and that's why we are so geared up about this, because this guarantees an outcome. We'll do certain things, we know the exact data behind it, we know what the value is going to be, and that's where we can guarantee the outcome, right? And that's such a powerful thing for us. I mean, it just kind of drives the entire team, because we are not taking, we are taking guesswork out of this. We're not saying, maybe we'll end up delivering some value. This is the value we're going to deliver, and we are guaranteeing it, is something that is very, very powerful to me.
Yeah. Well, absolutely, and that's obviously why you make a good inspirational leader for the team, because that's proper motivation rather than just the nuts and bolts of messing around with software. It's really focusing on that value and how we can make a difference for our customers. While we're talking about passions,
well, just to be clear about that, we do tighten the nuts and bolts as well.
Fantastic. So while I'm talking about passions of yours, I know one of your other passions, to talk about it for a moment, is cricket. And I believe you not only watch, but you actively play.
That is true. That is true. And so do you. I've seen you and kids, and I know your son is doing very, very well. So congratulations.
Yeah, my son's definitely the flag bearer there. I think it's the skills skipped a generation. So how have you been getting your cricket fixed during the lockdown?
Well, honestly, I'm not. I mean, it's a lockdown, so not much of a cricket fix. But I am coaching my son to be able to join our team, and
Fantastic.
someday soon he's going to replace me, which is always going to be a good thing. That's for the team, not for me personally, but for the team, it's going to be. But yeah, that's about all. I mean, there is not much cricket going on TV, and things have been postponed. So we are starting to get out a little bit here, but not much of a fix. No.
Well, okay, let's switch back to process mining then. So we know kind of process mining, it sounds like, can open up a number of doors for our customers, not just automation. How else can organizations benefit from a process mining initiative?
So, I think compliance is a huge thing, right? So folks are looking at different policies, whether they are externally imposed or internally imposed. I think most of the time they're really not sure if everything is being followed to the T. And process mining definitely, based on real data, it can show exactly what is happening if the policies are being followed, and you get an upfront notification if something is not happening, and you don't have to wait for something to crash and bang later on. You can catch it, catch them young, catch the problem early. So that's a big one. But I also feel, and I brought it up earlier, that it's uh, if you really try to understand what your process landscape is, and process and data are not too, you can't look at them in isolation. You're really trying to understand what is the data that is interacting with what steps in your process. You're actually applying data science to figure out what are the hot spots in your process, and how do you want to kind of treat maybe different segments of your customer base slightly differently in different situations. So it also leans into a customer interaction. It also leans into a customer journey map, because now you have a full process landscape to say, this is where I'm interacting with my customer, right? Do I have the right data to share with my customer at this point of time? Is it sensitive data? Am I in violation of certain things? It can also lead to a risk assessment from a data sensitivity standpoint. Are you sharing some data that should not be shared? So I think it's a broader view. Automation is definitely one part of it, but I would say customer journey mapping. It leans into your enterprise data strategy, and where you want to have your sensitive data. It definitely gets into a risk assessment. It definitely gets into compliance. So those will be some of the big things. Obviously, the cycle time, the speed, the quality of your process, all of those are impacted as well.
Yeah, and I know our teams are helping a lot of our customers with CCPA, and they're actively looking at using process mining to help out with that as well. As you say, it gives you that understanding of the actual processes, and then therefore the data flowing through those processes, which is crucial to a CCPA efforts. While we're talking about data, how much of a factor is data in process mining? So it would seem to be central, given the fact that all of these mined processes are coming from the business data. What about preparing and shaping that data? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I think that's a very important aspect. The data prep before you can actually visualize and analyze, it's very important. But the amount of data or the attributes of the data that you need for sure, which are kind of mandated for doing any kind of visualization, would be around the timestamps, the activity, the user. Those are the key attributes. So there are only 3 or 4 key attributes that you need to really visualize the process. But then when you want to do more analysis, more cost benefit analysis, then you need to plug in more and more data. So you really need to extract, you need to decide what are you doing this process mining exercise for in a way. But just to visualize, there is a basic set of attributes. To do more advanced analytics, you need more. Maybe you want to take out the claim amount if you really want to do analysis. So there is some amount of prep because not everything is in a standard format. People put the event data in different kind of event logs. So you will have to mine those logs and put them in a format that by any kind of process mining tooling. And there are lots of process mining toolings out there right now. I mean, we have some of our favorites, but I think that anybody who was doing business process management at some point of time, and at the end of the day, process mining is almost sits as an intersection between data mining and business process management, right? So people who were doing business process management have started to jump into process mining. So lots of tools out there, but everybody will have to do some sort of a data prep to make sure that their tool is able to consume all that information and do visualization and analysis on top of that.
Yeah. So I could definitely, could continue asking you questions on this for a considerable period of time, but I think we are kind of getting towards the end, and I do want to leave some time, and I'm not quite the end, because we always want to give our viewers a chance to pose their questions as well, and they've been sticking on patiently. So I'm going to switch to a few of the questions that have been passed over to me by my producer. So firstly, how many areas of a business can really benefit from process mining? And how long has this idea been around?
So the idea has been around since early 2000. So it's been a couple of decades. I think people really started jumping on it about a dozen years back. So 2006, 2007 is when it was started to get a little bit commercialized. We in fact did our first process mining exercise about 10 years back, and it was very, very nascent, right? But still we could see the value coming out of it. And we could see the glint in the eyes of our customers when they actually saw the results. And it was sometimes very, very counterintuitive to what they were thinking. So we could see the value at that point of time. I missed the first part, Greg, if you can.
So how many different areas of the business? I mean, I guess the question is this something niche to certain parts of the business, or how widespread across the organization would this be of benefit?
Yeah, so it cuts across. First of all, it cuts across industries, so there is no specific industry where it will be applicable or not applicable. It cuts across lines of business and different areas of business. What I would say is it will be more valuable to areas that have really long drawn processes, right? So if you have something that takes 3 minutes to complete, I don't know how much value you're going to get out of it. Versus, take the case of a life science process that goes through clinical trials and it takes a year to complete. You're going to get a lot more value because there are a lot more stakeholders. There are a lot more things that you can cut down on, and definitely the processes are very, very complicated. And I think process mining is also kind of, it's still after a year and after a decade and a half, at the very least, of being commercialized. I would still say there's so much more, and that's what makes it so much exciting for us. It's just the start. There is so much more that can happen in this discipline. I mean, we are really talking about one. People typically talk about one area. Take the order to cash or supply chain, but really the sometimes the network effects of different processes are not explored. And I think process mining will continue to evolve, and it will get to a point where they can really take the entire value chain and analyze the whole value chain and look at the improvement of opportunity rather than just one.
Yeah. So I saw some material on orchestration of business processes as well. They talk about, they kind of cross, how do different business processes in the organization play off each other, and what are the effects? So that would be interesting to see how it plays out. All right, we got a question. You talked about skepticism of process modeling and mapping at the top of the show. How accepting or understanding of process mining are organizations? Is there still a lingering suspicion?
There is, absolutely, there is a lingering suspicion, because I think the suspicion is that no vendor will be able to come in and look at my event data and really create a visual representation of my process. And I just want to say it's not an esoteric science anymore. It is out there. In fact, in Europe, it's widespread. It's picking up rapidly in the US. Every single vendor worth its salt, especially in the BPM space, has picked up on process mining. So, we can really take the data. I mean, you're capturing the data, you're sending out events somewhere on every interaction that a user is having with the IT system. We can capture that. We can correlate the different instances, and we can create a thread of your process for sure. There is no doubt about that. But I agree that there is a lingering suspicion. It's not very easy to convince clients that this can be done. But once they see a demo and once they see a POC in their environment, they are floored and they know that they're going to take it to different.
And I've seen that. I've definitely seen, it's when you start seeing those processes being visualized. Yes, there does seem to be an amount of magic in it, but if you think about it, it's just telling the story that's hidden in your data. And they've just created clever tools to do that.
Absolutely. And when you get asked certain questions, how are you generating this? And when you drill down and show the exact data that is flowing through, sometimes people go and check in their database if that something actually happened. And when they realize that it did, that's when the rubber meets the road and they say, yeah, this is for real. So
and it's the process context that discussion gives them. It's not, whereas if you looked at that individual data points, it may not be that interesting, but put it in the context of a sketched out process, and then all of a sudden it starts asking and answering questions.
Absolutely. And this is something that, again, people have asked, how is it different from data mining? I keep saying, it is different because it is mining the data in the context of the process. If you're just doing data mining, you don't have the context of the process. There is no way you can ask the question, oh, what is the root cause analysis of this bottleneck? You can't do that. Or even what is the bottleneck in my process, because you don't have the context of the process. So I think it's applying data mining, but with a very specific purpose of process improvement, of understanding the process. That's where the difference lies.
So I know we're running long on time. I think we'll squeeze in one other question. Let's see, we've got a few that have come in. What does a typical engagement look like if there is one? That's the question. Yeah. So what does a typical engagement look like if there's one?
So, everybody starts small, and we typically, just to make sure they understand what this is and what the value to their organization is, we ask for a medium complexity process. So there is a little bit of a digging to see what process would be the right one to do a proof of concept around this for them. It's a 3 to 4 week engagement to show them value from this, right? And includes all the initial interactions, the data prep, analysis, giving them real PDF files, showing them the actual tool to say, these are the different variations, these are how many transactions are going through this is what the cost benefit looks like if you want to do any kind of improvement. So with all the recommendations that we can make from our side, there is obviously a collaboration, right? So we are going to sit with their business analysts to say, okay, what actual activity is this? Because we know there's an activity here, but we might not know exactly what activity it is. So there is some collaboration, but it's a 3 to 4 week exercise to show value. So it's not a big barrier to entry. It's not a very high cost. It's a quick entry, quick value. And then once you see the value, it just takes off from there. And sometimes it takes us into more such engagement. Sometimes it could be some sort of a managed service, because like I said, you can proactively, you can understand very early where the problem is. We can help meet certain SLAs, because we know that some activity is taking more time than usual. So all of those things are possible. But an initial thing just takes 3 to 4 weeks, and then we take it up from there.
All right, Anand. Well, unfortunately, that's all we have time for this week. So I will say, Anand Gupta, thank you for joining us in the Sandbox today. I enjoyed our chat on a very exciting subject. We look forward to getting you back in future to talk about many other exciting topics. And I'll say thank you to our audience. So it's great having you all with us in the Sandbox today. Please join us next Thursday, the 30th of July, where we'll be hanging out with the bad boys of blockchain, which will include Jason Kelly of IBM. So until then, keep well and keep innovating, and see you all next time.
Thank you. Thank you, Greg. Thank you, everyone.